In this case, we are going to look at the frequency adverbs in English. First, we are going to look at the most common adverbs that are used in the English language and the different categories. When we want to refer to all of the time, most of the time, or much of the time, we normally use always, usually, and often. When we want to make reference to some of the time, we will use the adverbs sometimes and hardly ever. When we want to refer to almost never, we will use rarely or seldom. And not at any time, we will use the adverb never. Now, we are going to focus on the uses of these adverbs. We normally use them when we want to express how often we do something. Here is a list with the adverbs which are most commonly used: always, frequently, generally, hardly ever, infrequently, never, normally, occasionally, often, rarely, regularly, seldom, sometimes, usually. Let's have a look at the different examples. They occasionally go to the theater. I rarely have time to read a newspaper. John is self-employed and seldom takes holidays. Next, and what is more important, we are going to focus on the placement of adverbs. We normally place them in the middle of a sentence between the subject and the verb. For example, I usually do the shopping, or I hardly ever do the hoovering. We can also put them at the beginning of a sentence in order to make them stronger and emphasize. For example, I often go to the cinema. Attention, with the verb to be, the adverb of frequency goes after the subject and the verb. The structure will be the following one: subject plus to be plus adverb. Examples: they are never pleased to see me. She isn't usually bad-tempered. When we use an auxiliary verb like have, will, must, might, could, would, can, and so on, the adverb is placed between the auxiliary and the main verb. This is also true for the verb to be. The structure is the following one: subject plus auxiliary plus adverb plus the main verb. Example: she can sometimes beat me in a race. We can also use the following adverbs at the start of a sentence: usually, normally, often, frequently, sometimes, and occasionally. For example, occasionally I like to eat Thai food. But we cannot use the following at the beginning of a sentence: always, seldom, rarely, hardly, ever, or never. The adverb sometimes can be placed in front of a sentence, in the middle of a sentence, or at the end of a sentence. Let's have a look at the different examples. Sometimes we play together. In this case, it's placed at the beginning of the sentence. We sometimes play together. In this case, in the middle of a sentence. And we play together sometimes. That's placed at the end of the sentence. There are some expressions which are also used to say how often you do something. Some of these expressions are once in a while, from time to time, once in a blue moon, every now and again, twice a, several times a, etc. For example, I only see him once in a blue moon. Every now and again I go for trekking. For questions, we use how often and ever. Have you ever been to New Zealand? How often should you go to the dentist? We use hardly ever and never with positive, not with negative verbs. The examples are: she hardly ever comes to my parties. They never say thank you. These are the most commonly used frequency adverbs in English.